For most of modern history, there was a simple promise people were raised on. If you studied hard, showed up consistently, and put in the effort, your life would improve. Maybe not instantly, maybe not dramatically, but steadily. You'd earn more than your parents. You'd have more options than they did. You'd feel like your work was taking you somewhere. That promise shaped entire societies. It justified long hours, delayed gratification, and enormous personal sacrifice. And for a long time, it mostly worked. What feels different now isn't that life is hard. Life has always been hard. What feels different is that the math no longer adds up. People are working harder than ever, yet their lives are getting smaller, not just emotionally, but materially. Less space, less security, fewer choices. And this isn't limited to one country, one culture, or one political system. It's showing up everywhere, in different forms, with the same outcome. Effort no longer leads to a better life. This isn't a motivation problem. It's not a mindset issue. And it's definitely not laziness. If anything, this generation has done more than the one before it. More education, longer hours, more competition, more self-optimization. And yet, something feels deeply off. Like pushing harder on a door that used to open easily, only to realize it's been welded shut. To understand why, you don't need abstract theory. You just need to look at real places. Take Hong Kong. On paper, it's a success story. One of the richest cities in the world, a global financial center. High productivity, high efficiency, high pressure. Everything about it signals progress. But if you talk to people who actually live there, a different picture emerges. For more than 20 years, real wages barely moved. Not collapsed, not exploded, just stayed flat. At the same time, housing prices didn't hesitate. They multiplied, apartments shrank, commutes stretched. The idea of owning a home drifted from difficult to fantasy. What makes Hong Kong so revealing is that no one can blame a lack of effort. People work long hours. They're highly educated. They compete relentlessly. They do exactly what the system asks of them. And yet many end up stuck in place financially, watching more and more of their income disappear into rent. Families live in spaces that would be considered unlivable in other rich countries. Not because they failed, but because growth stopped reaching wages. Productivity increased. Effort increased. The reward went somewhere else. That's the part that should make you uncomfortable, because it means even when an economy grows, even when people do everything right, the outcome isn't guaranteed to improve their lives. If effort doesn't work there, the question isn't personal anymore. It's structural. What exactly is effort buying? Now look at China, where the problem isn't stagnation, but surplus. Every year, millions of new graduates enter the labor market, more degrees than the system can absorb. On the surface, it looks like progress. Education expanded, opportunity increased, but in practice, it created a brutal imbalance. When there are far more qualified workers than decent jobs, power shifts. Not toward labor, but away from it. This is where 996 comes from. Working from 9 in the morning to 9 at night, 6 days a week. 72 hours, technically illegal, widely practiced, often praised as commitment or passion. But strip away the language and what's left is leverage. When workers are easily replaceable, employers don't need to offer better pay or better lives. They demand more time instead. And people comply not because they believe in it, but because the alternative is falling behind in a system with no margin for error. The key isn't just the hours, it's the return on those hours. Working longer doesn't guarantee progress. Promotions slow down, wages flatten, burnout accelerates. The effort goes in, but the payoff doesn't scale. Over time, people notice. That's when withdrawal begins. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. When people decide to stop offering everything to a system that offers nothing back. That's where lying flat comes from. Not rebellion, not laziness, just logic. Then there's South Korea, which may be the most unsettling case of all. Because here, people followed the rules perfectly. Korea has one of the most educated populations on Earth. Students study relentlessly. Families pour enormous resources into tutoring. Entire childhoods are structured around exams and rankings. The promise is simple: sacrifice now, and life will reward you later. Except it doesn't. Not reliably. Degrees are everywhere, so they no longer protect anyone. Jobs that once required minimal education now demand university credentials just to apply. Youth unemployment stays high. First jobs are unstable and short-lived. Many graduates end up in work unrelated to what they studied, not because they pivoted, but because there were no alternatives. When everyone has the same signal, the signal stops working, and something else gets lost here. Time. Years of life spent chasing protection that no longer exists. Nights sacrificed. Childhoods compressed. Anxiety normalized. Not for growth, but just to stay in the race. What connects these places isn't culture, it's structure. In Hong Kong, effort is blocked by asset inflation. In China, effort is extracted through surplus. In Korea, effort is diluted by credential saturation. Different systems, same result. More work, less life. This is what people mean when they talk about effort inflation. Just like money loses value when too much of it circulates, effort loses value when everyone is forced to give more just to survive. You work longer for the same pay. You collect more credentials for fewer opportunities. You compete harder for rewards that no longer scale. The return on effort collapses, not gradually, but structurally. And here's the hardest part to accept. This isn't a temporary downturn. It's not a bad cycle that will fix itself if people stay patient. Productivity keeps rising, technology keeps improving, but the gains no longer flow the way they used to. They concentrate, they accumulate, they bypass wages. And the old promise, that sacrifice today guarantees security tomorrow, quietly expires. That's why burnout feels different now. It isn't just exhaustion, it's disillusionment. People aren't tired because they worked hard. They're tired because the work didn't lead anywhere. That's why motivation advice feels hollow. Why just try harder sounds almost insulting. Because deep down, people know the issue isn't discipline, it's incentives. When withdrawal movements appear across different societies under different names, that isn't coincidence. Lying flat, NPO, quiet quitting. These aren't signs of weakness, they're feedback. They're what happens when rational people realize the game no longer pays. And that leaves one question that's harder to ignore every year. What happens to a society when effort stops being a path forward? When work no longer promises dignity? When entire generations quietly decide that trying harder isn't worth it? That question doesn't have a clean answer, but pretending it doesn't exist has consequences.